Yes, sir. Okay, okay, okay. Admit it. Yes, he's there. Hello and welcome all again. We are sorry that we had a slight technical issue, so we lost link with Dr. Mukherjee for a while, but now we have been able to re-establish the link. So we will continue from where we left. Actually, uh, I introduced Dr. Mukherjee sir, and now it is your turn. The stage is all yours, sir. Please, you may begin.
Thank you, Moise. Thank you so much. It was actually your idea, and I just came in between. Just a couple of days ago, I received a call from our dear friend Mr. Kenneth, the director, Nehru Science Center, Mumbai, asking me to accept your invitation. And my first question was, what is the topic, what he wants me to speak? And then he said, why don't you read his letter? He has already sent you the letter. And when I read your letter, to be honest with you, the first question appeared in mind, what museum has to do with COVID? Why, the Science Museum all of a sudden thinking about creating COVID collection. But I tell you, I was happy also. I was very happy. I was happy for two things. In 2014-15, I got the opportunity to visit Wellcome Trust Museum in London. And after visiting the Wellcome Trust Museum, I started thinking immediately, why India is not thinking about health and medicine museum. Unfortunately, we could not create, one national level museum dedicated to medical history in the country. This is unfortunate. And then started, exploring what all countries already created institutes or museums with the help of my daughter. She did a kind of survey. And I would like to show a couple of slides. The first slide, giving you some idea the number of health and medicine institutes all over the world. You see on your screen now. Just 1 second. Yeah. You see on your screen now represents presence of health and medicine museums in the world. And you could see the maximum concentration in Europe. But I was surprised to see many institutes in Japan playing very active role in health and medicine. And then started exploring our country in India, whether we have any health and medicine museum. And then I realized, some of the medical institutes, medical colleges, they have departmental museum, not updated for many years. And then some, cities like Baroda, Hyderabad, as part of the garden, couple of galleries, they created in 1950s, 1960s, and not updated. So we realized, we could not do much, unfortunately, in the domain. But this is important, and that is why I accepted your offer that yes, we need to speak, and the present situation we are passing through. It's a very difficult situation, but people forgot past, diseases there were many, and pandemic-like situation country faced on many occasions. 1890, if you see 1890, smallpoxes, chicken pox and smallpox is spread all over the country, and hundreds and thousands of people died. Bombay suffered a lot, and because of that, the Bombay Municipal Corporation that time thought about creating a hospital, a separate hospital for infectious disease, and that hospital was known as Arthur Road Hospital, and today it is known Kasturba. When name changed, I don't know. And thanks to Professor Manjari Kamath providing some information from her research. And very interesting article appeared a couple of weeks ago in one of our Mumbai-based newspapers talking about the history of Kasturba Hospital. And the same hospital, though it was built, initially built to control chicken poxes in the city, but it was used for plague in 1896. And 1896 plague, Bombay plague was quite famous. Average today, when we look at statistics, we see that in past 3 or 4 months, if we count from March, about 1,200 people died so far in COVID. But in those days, the kind of statistics I'm getting, average 1,900 people used to die every week. And throughout the year, it continued throughout the year. And Kasturba played very, very positive role. And that was the only hospital in the city for infectious diseases. And that time, the population of Bombay city was 10 lakhs. And today, the population of Bombay is almost 18 million, or maybe a little more than 18 million. But we have Kasturba, the only hospital for infectious diseases. We could not create another hospital for infectious diseases because we are in the age of antibiotics. We thought, that chapter is over. We are not going to face that chapter. And that was very wrong. And not only that, the architecture, the planning and designing of hospital. I was reading the article. I was doing little research on Kasturba, and I felt, oh my God, they were so clever. Britishers, they were so clever. Though they acted very late during the plague, but the way they designed the hospital. And this is something, town planners must learn from them. And after 1896 plague, the Bombay Improvement Trust was constituted for the development of Bombay. And Bombay was planned accordingly. And today what we see, it's sad that we destroyed our city practically. Now, everywhere, wherever you go, any part of the world, any part of the country, people talk about smart cities. And I'm unable to understand what is that, smartness in smart city. It's basically concretization. Everywhere, tall buildings. There is no space between two buildings. And today, the disease, it's a huge crisis. But the disease, taught us a lot that many things went wrong with our planning, with our policies, with our economy. We ignored climate completely. How can you have development without environment? Environment is an integral part of development, but we don't talk about environment. We just only talk about development. GDP, the growth rate. What is important? Health of the people. If people are not healthy, then what kind of development are we talking about? Whatever we are doing in the country, in the society, for the people. And this part of history is important for future generation. And unfortunately, 1896 Bombay plague, we lost everything. We lost the entire history of Bombay plague. There is, one or two books, fortunately, where you get some information, but evidences practically nothing. Only two things remained of 1896-97. The hospital Kasturba is functioning today, literally rescuing us from the present diseases. And the Act 1897, Britishers passed. And that same Act, today our government, Maharashtra government, adopted in 2020. So just imagine, that how we act and how we think. But this is the time. It's not too late. How we document, how we record the origin of COVID in India and how it spread it in different regions. And yesterday, I was fortunate enough to receive an email from one of my colleagues. It says that, the British Museum is thinking of collecting COVID-related evidences. And they have prepared a questionnaire and sending a questionnaire to people in different countries for their opinion, feedback. Sorry. So what are those two questions? A, should museums like the British Museum collect some objects that reflect the pandemic, and if so, why? And then the second question, what one object would reflect how people in your country or city experienced, coped, resisted, created, and helped others in this crisis. Please include a caption and an image. So they are literally, creating data for the institute. I had little information about Smithsonian's, but Moise, you have more information. Smithsonian's National Museum of American History has assembled a dedicated COVID-19 collection task force. And there is another institute, very systematically, scientifically, and quietly started collecting information, data, evidences, is Wellcome Trust. But it's a part of their objectives. They record human history, medical history. And the founder of Wellcome Trust, Sir Henry Wellcome, was born in 1853 and died in 1936, where he says, I have for many years been collecting for it, purpose of demonstrating means of objects that will illustrate the activity of every notable step in the evolution and progress from the first germ of life up to fully developed man of today, unquote. One single man collected over a million evidences from all over the world. You'll be surprised to know what you can't see in our country, because we don't collect, health-related or medical-related data or evidences. But if you visit the Wellcome Trust Museum, you get to see the Indian collection. The primitive medicine of India you get to see in Wellcome Trust collection, but here in India you don't get to see the primitive medicine used in India, and they respect. It's not that they respect only modern medicine. So there are galleries, starting from primitive, ancient, and the modern medicine, and that gives you a lot of information that what went wrong when. And I was quite surprised. So in 1917, 1918, the major pandemic, which was described as mother of all pandemics, influenza, all over the world, and 30 million people died. 30 millions, and that was regarded the mother of all pandemics. So some institutes recorded information, recorded data. It is important for us, and especially science museum, and we are very happy in our country there are 25 efficiently managed science museums, very efficiently managed, I must say. And these 25 museums managing 25 science centers in different regions. It would be really nice if science museums or one of the science museum taking initiative and constituting 4 members or 6 members task force. Right now, we lost 4 or 5 months. We lost, and start analyzing the situation. Start collecting data from different regions, because we could see that some regions are very active. They are doing really wonderful work, particularly Kerala. It originated, in India, it originated first in Kerala, but how Kerala manage things and day to day. So some states, they're doing wonderful work. So those models, we need to understand. And what is happening in Maharashtra, why the situation is worst in Maharashtra. The density of population, migrants, town planning, everything, we need to study. And those information will be extremely important for town planners, students of architecture, and social scientists. And there is something, that the history, what we talk about, the Greek, medicine man, who is regarded as the father of medicine, Hippocrates in 4th century, wrote about the spread of disease by means of winds, water, and places, and made an association between climate, diet, and living conditions. Indian tradition always emphasized on intimate relationship between man and nature. The 3rd, 4th century Indian manuscript, Charak and Shushrup, very extensively talked about on diet, hygiene, prevention, medical education, nursing, the responsibilities of physicians and patients. It also dedicated a chapter on the importance of nature. Even the first king of India in the 3rd century BC, Ashoka the Great, mentioned in almost all his public inscriptions all over the continent the importance of hygiene, public health, trees, and ponds. And later in early 20th century, we find the great, poet Rabindranath Tagore talking about the importance of surrounding in harmony with nature. Binoba Bhabe, Baba Amte, talking about the importance of nature and preservation of nature. And it is also true, nature doesn't want us, but we want nature. And this is something, we have to remember. Any development, any progress, it can't be without, without environment, without the preservation of environment. We need to give more importance to preservation of environment for our sustainability. Now, one thing is very clear from the present disaster-like situation, that all our future development plans have to be reimagined from public health point of view now onwards. And it is therefore necessary for museums to record and preserve every details of pandemic. What Wellcome Trust is doing in UK, and why you want to record, why you want to preserve, because you want to preserve for the future. Future generation will need documentary evidence, photography, archives, and artifacts to help them understand this period of history. Sir Henry Wellcome, he said, he wrote in his diary, and I just quote, "Our views of progress are often exaggerated, owing to our ignorance of the past." And that is true. The more you ignore your past, you bring a lot of distraction to civilization. And this is what happening all around the world. So it's time, that we learn from the past, and we have still time to do something to preserve this period of history for the future generation. Thank you.
So if you may kindly come back to the screen and stop the presentation there.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much, and thank you so much for this wonderful introduction of the topic. So I'd like to ask a few questions regarding this, and we are also monitoring our online viewership through our channel. So if there are some questions from there from the visitors, we can take them as well. But to begin with, I'd like to ask you one question. It seems from your statements here that it is indeed a very practical requirement. It is not just something like a nice thing to do, but it is an utility. It is a requirement that we must endeavor to create one such museum. But in doing so, I'd like to ask you the first question like this. What is historically important in these cases, you feel? If you have to identify or enumerate a few bullet points, what are the things you'd like to preserve here?
See, there are many things, origin of disease. I'm talking in the context of present disease, that how it originated. There is a mystery. There is a debate, but we need to understand that how it originated and how it spread it, and then the impact of disease on economy, on public health, on our society. Uh, Everything, we need to record. And if you are not recording, I tell you, if you are not recording, we are going to deprive our future generation. And this is important. It could be a part of science museum activity, or it could be part of medical health museum or medicine museum. Now, unfortunately, we don't have a medical history museum in the country. If we are able to create a medical history, then the approach will be different. There, the emphasis will be only on medical aspect. But if science museum, steps in and take the leadership, then your approach will be completely different. You want to tell your visitors that how it impacted society in general. So that is important. Medical, I have no problem. We need a medical history museum, country like us, but science museum can create a permanent gallery dedicated to infectious diseases. It's not only COVID. That how it all started, chicken pox. But the history of chicken pox goes back to the Egyptian time, 3000 BC. And there are many relief panels, paintings where we find even one mummy was found later on. And it was, tested chicken pox, suffered from chicken pox. But such diseases, continued even today. And how we control, and the different kind of, research. You observe, what is happening all over the world. There are 100 companies. I was reading, there are 100 companies researching on COVID, and each one claiming that my vaccine, is more effective than your vaccine. And we don't know. Something is going on, and we hear that very soon, maybe in 3 months, maybe in 6 months, some vaccine will appear. But this is what happened even when plague started. This is what happened when chickenpox started. This is what happened when influenza started. Medicine was not ready. Medicine was not available because world was not available. And things started changing when antibiotics discovered. So I'm talking about pre-antibiotic era. That was a difficult era. But civilization survived. So that is important, that holistic approach. You have to develop a holistic approach.
Now, sir, in this, I envisage one problem that while this is the time when this whole thing is going on and we have plenty of artifacts all around us, the newspaper clippings, the TV broadcasts, the Facebook page posts, the actual artifacts being used in medical healthcare systems. The issue is if we want to collect it now, we have to risk our people to be within the hotspot. So that probably is not a very welcome proposition. And
No,
this,
no, 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 no. No, Miles. Data, data collection can start right now. So many newspapers covering now, all e-newspaper, because every day I'm reading e-newspaper. And if you ask somebody to preserve them in different PDF files and then take out the prints, that is first thing you have to do. And then so many articles appearing online, so many articles, and that is something you need to preserve those articles. And then what is important, if you are serious, if government is serious, constitute a task force, maybe 6 members task force, and get in touch with those states, affected states, get in touch with those hospitals, get in touch with the doctors on site, and asking them that this is something we are thinking. So please don't throw these things. We are thinking of preserving them. Now there are issues that infection, carries, infection, that you can sanitize. We are doing that every time, when we go out, we come, we use sanitizer. So if you study other museums, American museums, European museums, what they are doing, you will get enough clue. And it's a process, it might take 1 year, 2 years.
So, sir, in this regard, would you suggest that there can be a government appeal to different authorities who were directly involved in dealing with such artifacts, that right now they preserve the artifacts at their site, and later on they may hand it over to some official nodal agency who can take the responsibility of taking up such a museum?
See, government has a major role to play. There is no question, and we need to enlighten the government. If government takes interest in it, I think country will be benefited from this experience. Uh, I was talking to one of my friends in UK, uh, and he said, Mr. Mukherjee, we are studying all past records, that what went wrong in past, and just trying to find out some clue. As I said, Bombay plague in 1896. We lost everything, and little bit, the tidbits we find here and there. How government isolated infected people. Somewhere, government was really harsh, rude, and the act, if you read, though we are using it today, but it was really, rude. It was really rude. But you get plenty of clues from those, documentary evidences, because you are facing the similar kind of situation. So how people tackle that situation 100 years ago or 200 years ago, and how do you tackle this situation now based on their experiences? That is important. If you have no clue at all, then how do you deal with the situation?
So you mean,
And that is why these evidences are important. Yes.
so it means such a museum will not all be a conservator of a culture, but it can create the contemporary culture as well.
This is a part of contemporary culture. See, one of the key roles of the museum is to preserve and record evidences of the past and the present of mankind. This is one of the key objectives of the museum. So we should not forget that it is our duty to record, to preserve the history of past and present.
So there is an
And
there's an interesting question from Kenneth sir. He is online and he's listening to us, and he asks that you organized one Tabiat exhibition from the Welcome collections at your museum, and it was probably way back in 1989 in Mumbai. And he says that regarding this, can the Hafkin Institute be of any help? Can they help in regard in taking the initiative?
see, in 2000, 2016, 2015, 2016, we did an exhibition in collaboration with the Welcome Trust. So that was our first, encounter with the Welcome Trust. And now we know, what they do, because they share their activities with us. And that was a path-breaking exhibition for the first time in the history of museum movement. Some exhibition on health, and hundreds and thousands of people visited, because we are all concerned about our health, and infections are also part of our body, part of our health. That is something we should not forget. Hopkins Institute, one of the reputed institutes in the country, and as Mr. Hopkins, he was interested for the chickenpox vaccine, in 1890s, and then that was probably a part of grant hospital uh, assignment, and then later on they decided to create a separate setup, and that is how the Hopkins Institute came in existence. And it would be really, it would be really wonderful if state and central government taking initiative, and science museum coming in, helping them, or some science museum taking initiative and they are coming in and helping you to set up a permanent gallery, or a museum,
So,
recording.
sure, sure. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, it's okay.
So we have another question from another of our viewers, Mr. Prasad Pathak. He asks that can university libraries play a significant role? Because many US universities they keep records of pandemics. Is there any such structure in our country? Can they be of any help?
That's a very important question. In Europe and America, institutes and universities, playing positive role, very positive role in the present situation. You could see that Oxford University vaccine. You hear every day the progress of Oxford University vaccine. Even in China, also you see that some of the scientific institutes taken deep interest in vaccination, in research. American institutes, they were always there. When it comes to Indian institutes, Indian universities, unfortunately, we completely lack. I have no answer. I have no answer because we don't have infrastructure. A couple of days ago, I was reading very interesting article that somebody from Kharagpur IIT expressing, some professor expressing his desire to do something, and asking for the grant. It's not, you need a huge grant from the government, and government support is must. Now, what has happened after independence? Focus was more on on the development part, the economy, and we forgot everything. So we never thought that we have to face this kind of situation. That it was not in our imagination. Never ever thought, but it happened. It happened. We talk about disaster management, that how to control disaster-like situation. But we never ever imagine such kind of situation where you have no solution at the moment, no clue at all that from where it originated, we don't know, and the way it is spreading and how to control it. So there is a lot of research going on at the moment. And they are all confused. To be honest with you, when I read, I feel that scientists are also confused. But I'm quite hopeful that something will definitely emerge from out of confusion, and that will save the mankind.
So if you have to take charge of one such exhibition, what approach would you take? The approach of a data scientist or the approach of a collector?
No, see, what we are basically, art and archaeology museum. That is, our character. But with the time, we are changing. We are changing with the society, with the community, and we genuinely feel that it's important, institute like us to collect data. So asking curators, whenever you find any article, any research related article or newspapers, please preserve, create a separate PDF file, because many of them have no access to institute, so they can do some research at home, and then we put them together. That is the whole idea, putting them together. Immediately, we don't have any such idea, or kind of thinking, collecting evidences. That is something that is something we have to think seriously, that whether we can, because we don't have space. Our major problem, we don't have space, and our space, dedicated to paintings, sculptures, art historical material. So this is something we have to think.
So
But Tabiyat was a very successful exhibition.
one thing I understand that this pandemic, apart from its medical history and clinical issues, is a huge human story. These guest migrant workers walking down the line hundreds of kilometers, the challenges coming up from uh, different corners. Some people are asking whether it's a man-made virus or not. Someone is asking the questions to different cultures, whether particular habits are generating such kind of problems of the zoonotic viruses or not. So I think it's a huge human story to be collected. Now, a large part of the society probably is being affected in our country, who even doesn't have the access to internet. Now, how do you collect their stories? What is to be done to get their part of the whole idea?
For your information, if I'm not mistaken, there are NGOs. There are NGOs already working in the field, uh, collecting data about the suffering of migrants, the movement of migrants. There are journalists with their own interest, working on the subject. And many good articles I came across on migrants issues, particularly city like Bombay, Mumbai, Ahmedabad, Delhi, Hyderabad, Tamil Nadu, Chennai, even Haryana. So these stories are the stories of people, and I think it's important, that how we get in touch with those journalists, those people, NGOs, and get those stories from them. The data is important for the future generation, and that is not impossible. That is possible. And that could be a part of science museum, or could be a part of National Archive. I don't know what our National Archive is doing. Definitely they are thinking about collecting this data, and that is important for country's history. This is going to be a part of history tomorrow.
Yes, yes. At the time of 9/11, the US government designated one agency to be the nodal agency for collecting all such artifacts. Do you think that any such step by the government of India would be helpful in this regard?
uh, some American institute,
Now,
you mean to
US
say?
government assigned one American institute. They gave the responsibility to collect them for 9/11 cases. Now, do you think that in India also the Indian government can assign the responsibility of collecting all such, or at least overseeing creating a network of collections to certain institute and agency who can do this?
See that there are, Mahesh, you have to understand, there are institutes like Wellcome Trust in UK. They are everywhere. They are everywhere, all over the world. They have excellent network, and they do collect information. They do collect evidences. Uh, it's impossible, for us to prevent them. Whatever they are doing for the world, because you have access to their collection. Anybody can go and see the collection and study the collection, and it's good that one institute is collecting. Uh, if some serious institute coming and collecting information for the mankind, uh, I don't think there is any problem at all. But we have to have our own initiative. I'm all the time I'm thinking about our own institute. That something some institute in India take interest. We don't want to lose everything like the plague, the history of plague we lost, except two things. That Kostuba is still functioning for your information, and the Act 1897. But this part of this part of history, the period we are passing through, it's going to be history tomorrow. Uh, some Indian institute should think about, and government has to encourage. I'm expecting, government to step in, and it's not only visitors. It will help town planners, architects, economists to understand, that how economy suffered, how everything came into standstill.
So you mean the economic ramification of this whole event should be given a special stress and should be collected separately?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That is why I say that to develop a kind of holistic approach, it can't be compartmentalized. That only the medical part known, even the social aspect, economic aspect, political aspect. There are many political dramas going on. The political aspect. So everything we need to preserve for the future. So if they face such kind of situation, they get some clue at least. You never know what will happen after 50 years or after 100 years. We thought nothing will happen to us. We were relaxing. When things started happening in China, whole world was relaxing. And now you see where we stand.
So we have
So
got
this is
another question. We have got another question which asks that the reactions to lockdown in different places and different communities has been different, and we had to adopt separate strategies for these macro and micro levels in different time and place. So, do you think that this is also necessary to be documented, how it unfolded in different phases of this lockdown period?
uh, I really don't want to get into it because that's not my subject. I'm a museum director. I talk about the importance of preservation of evidences and all that. It is up to the administration because they are all experts.
And
They know
probably the
what is
social
good, what
scientists.
is bad for social scientists and experts. So they know what is good and what is bad for people, and they are really working hard. I must appreciate our administration, health sector, police. They are all dedicated, and I salute them. So whatever decision they are taking, I think we have to respect.
So, one last question I'd like to put up to you, that how do you think that the people can be encouraged to participate into making one such collection nationwide?
No, it all depends, how you create awareness. You must have noticed the map, the first slide I shared with you. Uh, of course, that was a personal survey. Surprisingly, you don't see any institute dedicated to health and medicine in India, but the concentration you see in Europe and America largely, and quite a few remarkable institutes doing remarkable work in Japan. So this is something we have to think seriously the how we create awareness, because there is no awareness. People tend to forget, and this is what exactly happened. So many epidemics, pandemics we already passed through, but we could not record them. We could not preserve any evidences. So this is something COVID gave us some opportunity, if I may say so. That look, if you want to record this history, you record it. Otherwise, you will be losing everything. and then you feel helpless. You really feel helpless that we don't have any information. So this is, something we need to talk in all forums. A lot of talks going on at the moment online, uh, accessibility, education, child health, climate control, uh, but nobody talking about what you wanted me to speak, the subject, creating a COVID collection for the future. And this is extremely important for the country, for the people.
So I understand. Before we sign off, I understand what you wanted to say is very much apparent in one of the statements from Barack Obama. Once he said that no crisis should be wasted, and you want that this crisis should not be wasted for the future.
Should not be wasted for the future. Exactly.
Thank you so
Thank you,
very much,
Mohit.
sir, for joining us. Thank you so much for giving so much of time to
Thank,
us. It was wonderful and very illuminating to have this presentation from you. Thank you so much. And
thank you so
hopefully
much.
and expectedly, we'll have one such museum, and probably you will be around them to share your ideas and views there too. Thank you, sir.
I'll be very happy to support. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.